Hello family, enjoy this relaxing moment with Charm Stories. Remember to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comment section. Also generously hit the like button cause it means the world to us. Please sit back, relax and enjoy as we dive into the story. A deafening clap of thunder erupted over the small village of Izayama. Rain pelted the palm leaves, and wind howled through the narrow dirt lanes like a fierce spirit unleashed from the underworld. In the humble clay hut of the Yuko family, a single oil lamp flickered, struggling to stay alive in the onslaught of the storm. Inside that hut, a baby's cries mingled with the rumbling skies. Her mother, Ima Yuko, fought through the stormy night to bring new life into the world. Sweat beaded her forehead, and her breath came in ragged gasps. Outside, some of the villagers had gathered, faces anxious, their clothes soaked through. The elder, a wiry man with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom, whispered into the screaming wind, "This child, she will either bring great change or great chaos. There is fire in her." When at last the baby emerged, Ima drew her child close. The baby's eyes, wide and alert, reflected the glimmer of lightning that streaked across the sky. "Lena," Ima declared softly. "Lena Yuko, you are my storm child, and you will stand strong against any tempest." The villagers let out a sigh of relief at the successful birth. They returned to their homes, battered by rain yet thankful that both mother and child had survived. But the elder lingered a moment longer. He peered through the door, meeting Ima's gaze. "Raise her to be courageous," he said quietly. "She will need all the courage she can get." From her earliest moments, Lena Yuko had a spark in her eyes that set her apart. As a toddler, she was not content to play in the dust or splash in the puddles during the monsoon. She was drawn to voices, to stories, to knowledge in any form it might come. Ima used to lull her to sleep with folk tales about cunning tortoises and heroic warriors. Lena would ask so many questions that Ima would run out of answers, often ending with, "My child, the rest you must discover on your own." By the time Lena was 6, she had discovered a pile of old, discarded books in the village dump, dog-eared textbooks and half-torn story collections. To everyone's surprise, she toted those tattered pages around like treasure. At night, she read by the light of a single candle or sometimes by moonlight if the candle had run out. She learned basic arithmetic from a few partial math pages and pieced together entire stories from scraps that were never designed to fit. The sight of her hunched over ruined books caused many villagers to shake their heads. "Why bother?" some would say. "She's just a child with foolish fantasies." But Lena was unfazed. With each new page, her eyes glowed brighter. She grew taller, skinnier, and more resolute than many kids her age. While other children spent the evenings racing around the outskirts of the village, Lena would look on wistfully at times, but then return to her reading, determined to glean as much knowledge as she could from every smudged paragraph. She recalled the elder's words, stories repeated in hushed tones, about her birth in the middle of that raging storm, about how the skies had seemed to roar in recognition of her arrival. She felt deep within her that she was meant for something beyond Izayama's boundaries, something bigger than the dusty lanes and the whispered judgments. One afternoon, about 10 years into her life, Lena dragged her best friend Amma to a large mango tree near the edge of the village. The tree's sprawling branches created a natural canopy, and the succulent smell of ripe mangoes blended with the sweet fragrance of possibility in the air. They sat there on the thick, twisted roots, the surface lumpy but comforting. "Sometimes I feel like I have to do something huge," Lena admitted, voice hushed as though she were afraid the mango tree itself might overhear. "Like, build a business that changes our world, or find a way to connect this village to the rest of the country. Something no one expects of me." Amma, who wore a simple floral dress and dreamed of opening her own bakery, smiled. "You will, Lena. I know you will. Maybe one day, you'll run a big company, and I'll bake cakes for your staff." Lena laughed, eyes shining. "You'd be in charge of feeding my entire team." They clinked imaginary glasses and gazed off into the distance, where the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with orange and purple streaks. Lena's heart pounded with restless ambition. She felt, even then, that life wouldn't be content to let her remain in Izayama. Sooner or later, a new storm would arrive, pushing her toward a destiny she could almost taste, if only she dared to chase it. Shortly thereafter, The shape of Lena's future began to take form in the presence of a stranger named Kenzo. He arrived in Izayama as part of a community outreach program, wearing polished city shoes and a shirt that looked far too crisp for village life. He was everything the local men were not, brimming with confidence, exuding an air of cosmopolitan flair, and carrying himself as though the world owed him respect. Lena, at 14, found him intriguing. He saw her reading a battered textbook on agriculture and raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing with that?" he asked, half smirking. "Trying to learn," she replied, unafraid to meet his gaze. He chuckled. "You're quite the curious one. But be careful. No one likes a girl who thinks she's smarter than everyone else." It was a backhanded compliment, a spark of tension that kindled the beginning of something Lena would later realize was more complicated than she could have imagined. But in that moment, under the shade of the mango tree and the lingering resonance of thunder in her memories, she felt drawn to Kenzo's aura of the unknown. The stage was quietly being set for a storm of another kind, this time in her own heart. Years passed like the turning of pages in one of Lena's books. By the time she reached 19, she had transformed from a curious girl with a handful of tattered pages to a young woman bursting with ideas about technology, agriculture, and ways to connect rural farmers to city markets. Whenever the conversation turned to big dreams, she lit up like a lantern at dusk. Kenzo, who had begun visiting Izayama more frequently, had, in her mind, grown from a passing intrigue into a beacon of opportunity. She admired his worldliness, at least compared to the villagers, and the way he seemed to navigate urban culture with ease. He was always on his phone, making calls or texting people in the city. She found that glamorous. He would sometimes tease her, "You're so smart, Lena, but maybe you think too big for this place." Though the words made her bristle, she found herself drawn to his attention. Despite the nagging doubts that pinged in her mind, she reasoned that a relationship with Kenzo might open doors. Their conversations had a certain pull. Kenzo, smiling faintly, "You know, if you come to the city with me, I'll show you all the big offices and fancy cars. You'll see why some dreams are just, well, dreams." Lena, a hint of a challenge in her voice, "Or maybe I'll see exactly how to make them real." He would shrug, half amused, half dismissive. It was a dance of attraction and friction, as though they were two magnets that sometimes repelled but somehow stayed stuck together. When Kenzo proposed to Lena, she was 20. The village erupted into celebration the moment word spread. Colorful fabrics adorned doorways, children sang and danced, while drummers pounded out beats that echoed into the starry night. Lena found herself under a flower-strewn canopy, ring on her finger, with Kenzo's arm wrapped around her shoulders. She wanted to feel pure joy. But in the pit of her stomach, an unsettling question lingered. Was she giving up her dreams for the promise of security? Kenzo, intoxicated by the festivities, whispered into her ear, "You can stop worrying about all those silly ambitions. I'll take care of you now. You just need to be by my side." Lena felt her heart stutter. Those were not the words she had hoped to hear. At the after-party in the center of the village, Amma approached Lena, concern etched on her usually bright face. "My friend," she began carefully, "you don't look happy. Everyone else is dancing, but you're standing like a statue." Lena forced a smile. "I'm just overwhelmed," she lied. "It's a big step. Marriage. A new life. And your dreams." Amma pressed. "Your ideas for a startup? Your plan to connect farmers and city buyers? You never stop talking about it." Lena glanced at Kenzo. He was animatedly sharing stories of the city with an admiring group of local youths, boasting of the money one could make if only they knew the right people. The tight feeling in Lena's chest grew sharper. "He says I don't need all that. He'll provide," she answered, voice barely above a whisper. Amma's eyes narrowed, but she squeezed Lena's hand, offering silent support. As they parted, Lena forced herself to celebrate, ignoring the sense that she was standing on the edge of a precipice. Not long after the proposal, Kenzo moved Lena to a small residence near the city outskirts. In her mind, she pictured a gateway to endless possibilities, a place where she might take a few steps into the tech world she so desperately wanted to explore. But reality slammed the door in her face. Kenzo started to show a different side, one that was dismissive and controlling. He insisted on handling the little money they had, making it clear that her role was to stay at home, keep things tidy, and be available for him. Whenever she tried to voice her ideas about starting a small agrotech platform or creating a network for rural farmers, he would shake his head with an indulgent but condescending smile. "That's cute," he'd say, "but focus on being a supportive wife. Ambition is good, but you're not built for the cutthroat business world. You're just a village girl at heart." Deep down, Lena felt a piece of her spirit being chipped away. She caught glimpses of city life, towering office buildings, bustling streets, the hum of innovation, whenever she ventured out for errands. It was mesmerizing yet just out of reach. Each time she mentioned her longing to enroll in a short business course or pitch an idea to an incubator, Kenzo swiftly shut her down. Arguments sparked with increasing frequency. One night, they had a heated conversation in the cramped living room. Lena, angry tears welling up, "You don't even want me to try. You make me feel like my dreams are worthless." Kenzo, rolling his eyes, "I'm tired of hearing about your fantasies. It's not your place to build companies. Why can't you be happy with what you have?" She swallowed her tears, but bitterness lodged in her throat. "I'm not going to apologize for wanting more," she said, voice quivering. "I can't live like this, Kenzo." He responded by storming out, slamming the door behind him. Lena stood there, the stillness of the room a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside her. Some nights, she sat by the window, looking out at distant city lights, remembering the words spoken by that village elder the night she was born. "She will need all the courage she can get." Lena clung to that voice of prophecy, using it as a fragile shield against Kenzo's negativity. She would whisper to herself, "You are meant for more, Lena. Don't let him take that from you." Still, she felt trapped. Her mother's reassuring presence was miles away, and the comforting canopy of the mango tree was replaced by peeling apartment walls that seemed to close in on her. The storms of her childhood had prepared her for challenges, but this new tempest, within the four walls of a loveless, controlling partnership, felt more suffocating than any thunderstorm. She was starting to understand that the biggest battles are not always fought outside. Sometimes they rage quietly in your own heart. The turning point arrived on a rainy afternoon, reminiscent of the night she was born. Kenzo had lost another job, or so he claimed, and was in a foul mood. The tension was so thick Lena could feel it the moment she walked into the apartment after running errands. His once glossy shoes were caked in mud, tossed haphazardly in the corner. The place reeked of stale anger and fresh resentment. "I'm tired of your big ideas, your constant complaining about how I don't support you," Kenzo said, eyes flashing. He stood in the narrow living room, arms crossed. "You're too ambitious. You act like you're better than me because you read a few books." Lena took a careful breath. "I never said I was better, Kenzo. I just want more out of life, for both of us." "Why is that a crime?" His face contorted. "You and your delusions of grandeur. You think the city investors are going to throw money at you because you come from some dusty village? You don't have the looks, the connections, or the qualifications." She winced, every word like a slap. But a steely resolve coiled in her gut. "I have ideas. Real ones. I just need a chance." Kenzo turned away, and for a moment, Lena thought he might calm down. But then he scoffed. "I'm done with this. I'm done with you." He grabbed a small duffel bag and stuffed a few clothes into it. "Without me, you'll be nothing. Mark my words." Lena's heart pounded violently in her chest. As he shoved past her to the door, she managed to speak, voice trembling. "Why do you hate my ambition so much? Why won't you ever believe in me?" He paused, looking down at her with a mixture of disdain and pity. "Because you'll never make it, Lena. You're just you." With that final dagger, he slammed the door, leaving her alone in the suffocating silence of the empty apartment. The shock was immediate, but the deeper pain settled in slowly, like a stain that wouldn't wash away. At first, she cried uncontrollably, clutching the ring he had given her. She felt the weight of shame, for trusting him, for believing in a future that never came, for not acting sooner to assert her own worth. But as tears subsided, something else began to bloom inside her, a determination formed from heartbreak and shattered illusions. If Kenzo thought she was nothing without him, she would prove him wrong, not out of spite but out of a burning need to reclaim her sense of self. She spent the next 2 days in that apartment, packing up her meager belongings and fighting waves of anxiety. The city beyond her window was calling, and she resolved that if she was going to be alone, she might as well start over on her own terms. She dialed Amma, who was still in Izayama, her voice cracking with each word. Amma. I need a place to crash for a night or two. Just to figure out my next steps. Amma's comforting tones filled the phone line like a bomb. Oh, Lena, I'm so sorry. Of course you can stay with me. Come home. We'll figure something out together. As Lena sat in the rickety old bus that took her back to Izayama, she stared at the passing landscape. Fields gave way to dirt roads, and the comforting smell of wet soil made her think of childhood. The heartbreak in her chest was real, but she refused to collapse under it. She kept replaying Kenzo's final words, "You'll never make it," like a challenge thrown down before her. At dawn the next day, she stood with Amma under the mango tree where they had once dreamed of big futures. The tree seemed smaller than she remembered, but its roots were strong, and its branches stretched toward the sky as if it, too, was reaching for something beyond the horizon. "Are you okay?" Amma asked, offering her a slice of fresh mango. "Not yet," Lena admitted, biting into the sweet fruit. "But I will be." She sketched out her plan for an agrotech idea she dubbed Rootlink. It was a simple enough concept: connect rural farmers directly with urban buyers through a mobile app, cutting out middlemen, ensuring fair prices. She told Amma, "This is the future, and we can start it right here." Amma tilted her head, considering. "It sounds brilliant, but how will we fund it? How will we build an app?" "I'll figure it out," Lena replied, voice gaining strength. "I have to." The determination in her eyes reminded Amma of the stormy night Lena was born, a night full of thunder and possibility. With renewed faith, Amma smiled. "You know I'm with you, always." That was the moment Lena decided to leave Izayama again, but this time on her own terms. She would head straight into the heart of the city, not attached to Kenzo's dismissive shadow but propelled by her own unwavering will. So she packed a small duffel bag, much like Kenzo had, and boarded a bus back to the urban sprawl, refusing to let heartbreak reduce her to rubble. She had her notebooks full of sketches, plans, and half-formed ideas. She had a handful of addresses for people she hoped to meet. Most importantly, she had a seed of faith in herself. Though she had left Izayama before under the illusion of love, this time she departed with something far more powerful: the clarity that she was destined to walk her own path, no matter how steep. Lena's first days in the city were a whirlwind of disappointment, small victories, and raw survival. She arrived with a total of $50 to her name, a notebook of big ideas, and the unwavering belief that if anyone was going to shape her destiny, it had to be her. The city greeted her with a cacophony of car horns, bustling pedestrians, and towering skyscrapers that both enthralled and intimidated her. She marveled at the neon signs and the endless rows of shops and stalls. But the initial wonder soon gave way to the harsh realities of urban life. Rent was exorbitant, job opportunities were scarce for someone with no formal education, and her savings dwindled rapidly. For the first few nights, she crashed on the couch of a friend from Izayama. However, the arrangement was tenuous, and she knew she couldn't impose for long. Despite the dire situation, Lena's spirit never wavered. She spent her days visiting tech hubs or small local incubators, trying to pitch her Rootlink concept. She crafted a rudimentary prototype by sketching out user flows on paper, explaining how the app would bridge farmers to urban consumers. Many people listened politely, offering half-hearted nods before brushing her off. Others simply sneered, as though a rural girl had no place even uttering the word tech. One unseasonably hot afternoon, she managed to secure a short meeting with a small-time investor through sheer persistence. The man sat behind a cheaply made desk, his office barely bigger than a closet. He glanced at her sketches and quickly dismissed them. "Cute idea, but you're not what investors are looking for," he said. "You're too inexperienced. You speak with an accent. I don't see you pulling this off." He then smiled apologetically, as though pitying her for daring to dream. Lena walked out of that cramped office, tears stinging her eyes, but her resolve stayed intact. she mumbled under her breath. "One day, you'll regret underestimating me." Then, straightening her shoulders, she made a mental note to keep refining her plan. Things came to a head one night when the friend of a friend asked her to leave, citing space issues and mounting bills. Lena found herself on the streets with her duffel bag and notepad, searching desperately for a place to sleep. She ended up in a cheap hostel where the bed felt more like a wooden plank covered in an old sheet. Despite the grim circumstances, she took comfort in the fact that at least she had a roof over her head. In the mornings, she pored over job listings, anything to keep her afloat while she continued to pitch Rootlink. She applied to supermarkets, fast food joints, small call centers, any place that would pay a basic wage. After countless rejections, she finally landed a part-time job in the kitchen of a small eatery on the outskirts of town. It was exhausting work, washing dishes, mopping floors, and sometimes preparing vegetables if the cook was busy. But it put a tiny bit of money in her pocket and allowed her just enough stability to keep going. Many nights, she collapsed onto the thin mattress at the hostel, arms aching from scrubbing dishes, mind buzzing with ways to improve Rootlink. She would check her phone, an old cracked model that barely held a charge, hoping for an email or text from someone interested in her proposal. More often than not, there was no new message. On the rare occasion someone did reply, it was always the same, "Not the right fit," or "Good luck, but no thanks." Still, she persevered. One fateful day, after finishing her shift, she happened upon a local farmer's market. Stalls brimmed with fresh produce. As she wandered the aisles, she struck up conversations with a few farmers. To her delight, they bemoaned the same challenges she had identified: middlemen paying them pennies, the difficulty of reaching customers directly, and no real platform to showcase their products. With each story, Lena felt more certain that Rootlink could be the answer. She asked them if they would try a rudimentary pilot project. Essentially, they'd text her what they had available, and she would blast it out to a small network of city acquaintances she had gathered. To her surprise, several farmers agreed, though they eyed her skeptically. She scribbled down their phone numbers, determined to make this pilot work. Within a week, she had brokered her first few produce deals through nothing but text messages. A local grocery store agreed to buy plantains directly from one farmer, cutting out the middleman, and paid a better rate. The farmer, stunned by earning more, told all his neighbors. Word spread slowly but surely, and Lena began to see a tiny glimmer of hope. She named her concept Rootlink, because it went straight to the roots of the supply chain, forging connections that were once impossible. Although she hadn't built an official app yet, just a rudimentary network of phone contacts and social media posts, people started to notice. She even landed a small article in an online newsletter featuring local entrepreneurial stories. The piece was titled, "From Village to Venture: How One Young Woman Hopes to Revolutionize Farm-to-City Sales." Reading that article, perched on the edge of her hostel bed, Lena felt tears of triumph slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider in the city. She felt like a pioneer. She took a picture of the article with her phone and sent it to Amara, along with a text message, "We're doing it, step by step." Amara replied with a string of excited messages. "I knew it, Lena. The world needs your ideas." Yet, as Rootlink started to gain traction, new challenges emerged. How to expand, how to handle logistics, how to formalize contracts. And underlying it all was the fear that at any moment, someone might swoop in and steal her idea before she had the chance to protect it. Still, the city that had once been a place of strangers and snubs was slowly transforming into a crucible, forging Lena's resolve and pushing her to discover her own strengths. Even as she faced financial hardship and the gnawing pressure of daily survival, Lena never forgot those words Kenzo had hurled at her: "Without me, you'll be nothing." She clung to them like fuel, letting them spark the fires of her ambition. Because she sensed the truth, those storms she had braved in Izayama were nothing compared to the battles she would fight in the city. And she was determined, come heartache, come rejection, to emerge victorious. Just as seeds push through soil to find the sun, Lena's determination found daylight despite adversity. Bolstered by the modest success of her informal pilot, she decided to formalize Rootlink. With no investor in sight, she took her tiny earnings, moved from the hostel into a cramped single room she rented on the far edge of town, and set up a makeshift office in the corner. A battered second-hand laptop became her most prized possession. Every morning, she woke up before dawn to handle produce orders. She connected with local farmers via text and social media, then matched their supply to small grocery stores, caterers, and restaurants she had forged relationships with. During the day, she worked shifts at the eatery to cover her living expenses. At night, she consumed every free online tutorial about building a minimum viable product, MVP, for Rootlink. Sleep was a luxury, but passion spurred her on. One weekend, a contact told her about a small tech competition in the city, an event designed to spotlight grassroots innovations. Prizes included mentorship and a modest cash award. Lena's heart pounded at the thought of presenting her concept publicly, but fear of ridicule gnawed at her. Memories of being laughed at by real investors haunted her. Still, the possibility of making professional connections was too good to pass up. Armed with a simple slideshow, she arrived at the community hall where the competition was held. She felt painfully underdressed next to polished entrepreneurs who brandished iPads and wore tailored suits. But she refused to let intimidation paralyze her. As she stood in line with the other participants, she overheard a few men snicker, "She's probably lost. This is a tech competition, not a charity drive." She clenched her jaw, ignoring the stabs of self-doubt. Finally, it was her turn to present on the small stage. Spotlight glaring, voice shaking, she introduced herself. "My name is Lena Yuko, and I'm the founder of Rootlink." She recounted the struggles of farmers in her village, how middlemen exploit them, and how the city's demand for fresh produce remains unmet in certain markets. "My platform will connect the two worlds," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I believe that if we harness technology, we can ensure fair prices for farmers and fresher products for consumers." A few eyebrows rose in genuine interest. She demonstrated the text message-based process she'd already been using, ending with a slide of modest but real revenue results. Applause sprinkled across the hall. When she stepped off the stage, her entire body trembled with adrenaline. She had never felt so vulnerable, or so alive. The judges took a short break to deliberate. When they returned to announce the winners, Lena held her breath. There were third, second, and first place spots. She secured second place. While she didn't win the top prize, the runner-up award included a small grant and 2 months of mentorship with a local startup accelerator. It felt like she had found a golden key to a locked door. "Congratulations," one of the judges said, extending a hand. "You've got passion, and your idea seems to have traction. We'd love to help you refine it." She stared at the outstretched hand, scarcely believing it. "Thank you," she finally managed, shaking his hand firmly. The news rippled through her small circle. Amma sent voice messages that sounded like she was on the verge of tears of joy. Even a few of the farmers called to congratulate her, excited by the prospect of more business. Lena felt a sense of validation that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Now the real work would begin. The Startup Accelerator's mentorship sessions were nothing short of transformative. She learned about market research, user acquisition, and the importance of building a strong brand. Best of all, they provided her access to a network of designers and developers who could help transform her text-based operation into an actual app. The mentors challenged her relentlessly, questioning her assumptions, forcing her to articulate her vision more clearly. A pivotal moment came when she sat down with a developer named Kyra, who was intrigued by the social impact potential of Rootlink. "I've seen 100 delivery apps in this city," Kyra said, "but your focus on farmers directly is unique. Let's get to work." Days bled into nights as they hammered out wireframes and user stories. As Rootlink began taking shape digitally, Lena experienced a pang of nostalgia. She thought of Izayama's fields, the mango tree, her mother's gentle face, the mocking stares from neighbors who saw her as a girl lost in silly books. She also recalled Kenzo's cruel words. With each line of code that Kyra wrote, with each meeting that refined her business model, she felt like she was dismantling those words piece by piece. Finally, after 2 months of intense development and planning, they launched the beta version of the Rootlink app. It was rudimentary, no fancy aesthetics, no advanced features, but it let farmers list their produce and let buyers place orders directly. Within days, a handful of farmers earned more than they ever had before. Screenshots of successful transactions lit up Lena's phone. The farmers' gratitude, voiced through stammered phone calls and excited text messages, brought Lena close to tears many times. Local buzz began to build around Rootlink. A neighborhood journalist wrote an article titled "The Farm Girl Behind the Tech," praising Lena's grassroots approach. Though well-intentioned, the article portrayed her as a kind of underdog hero from a forgotten village, inspiring some readers and annoying others who felt it was oversimplified. Still, the publicity led to invitations to speak at small entrepreneurship events. Each talk was a nerve-wracking yet empowering experience. Meanwhile, the day job at the eatery came to an end when her boss noticed the press coverage and decided she was too distracted to work there. Lena left on mixed terms, grateful for the income the job had provided but knowing that she had now graduated to a new phase of her journey. She had to make Rootlink work full-time, or she would be back to scraping by. One bright afternoon, as she was leaving a meeting with a local co-op that was interested in using Rootlink, her phone buzzed. It was an email from an investor who had read about her in that neighborhood piece. She froze, heart hammering, as she scanned the message. They expressed interest in a meeting, no promises, but interest was interest. She wanted to scream with excitement. Heading home, she recalled Kenzo's face, the way his eyes had looked at her with such disdain. Suddenly, she felt an overwhelming rush of pride. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, like a tiny plant bursting through the ashes after a fire. That evening, she sat in her cramped room, gazing at the city lights through the small window. The storms of the past had not destroyed her, they had tempered her resolve. And in the quiet hush of her thoughts, she whispered the words, "I'm doing this, no one can stop me." Fate often has a twisted sense of timing. Just as Lena felt she was finally standing on firmer ground, an unexpected figure reappeared, threatening to shake her foundations: Kenzo. Months had passed since he'd walked out. Lena had forged ahead, focusing on Rootlink with laser-like determination. She barely thought of Kenzo anymore, except as a cautionary tale of what she never wanted again. But then, late one evening, her phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. The words sent a chill through her. Kenzo. "Hey, Lena. Long time. I heard you're doing big things. Can we talk?" She stared at the screen, heart pounding with a mix of anger, fear, and an uncomfortable flicker of curiosity. Why was he contacting her now? Had he actually changed, or was he just sniffing around because she was getting noticed? She debated not replying at all, but finally decided it might be better to confront the situation. Her response was terse. "What do you want?" His answer was full of feigned warmth. "Just want to see how you've been. I'm in a tough spot. Could use some help." Lena felt a wave of bitterness. This man who once belittled her was now seeking her assistance? In the days that followed, Kenzo bombarded her phone with texts and missed calls, each one more desperate. He claimed to have lost his job months ago, had run out of money, and was now couch surfing. At first, she ignored him, focusing on a slew of investor meetings and platform upgrades. But he persisted. One day, out of exasperation, she picked up a call. Lena, coldly, "You have 5 minutes." He launched into a story about how life had dealt him a bad hand, how everything fell apart after he left, and how he now realized she was the only person who had ever truly cared about him. He needed a job, any job. He dropped hints that if she could offer him something at Rootlink, he'd be eternally grateful. She clenched her jaw. "You told me I'd never be anything," she said softly. "Why should I help you now?" He stumbled over his words, insisting he'd been wrong, that he saw the error of his ways. Lena listened, face impassive. In the background, the flicker of city lights reminded her that she had come too far to be dragged down by old wounds. She decided that vengeance wasn't worth it, but neither was forgiveness that came cheaply. "I'll think about it," she finally said, then ended the call. In the meantime, Rootlink was on a steady upward trajectory. More farmers were signing up, the user interface was improving, and word of mouth in local markets was strong. Lena had begun carefully courting larger investors, mindful to protect her vision and mission. It was at one such pitch meeting that everything changed. She was presenting to a group of well-connected individuals in a sleek downtown office when she glanced across the room, and there, seated at a small side table, was Kenzo. At first, she thought her mind was playing tricks. What was he doing here, among potential investors and advisors? She powered through her presentation, ignoring the knot in her stomach. Once she finished, a brief Q&A followed, and she answered queries with a composure that would have impressed her younger self. Still, Kenzo's presence loomed. When the meeting ended, the attendees drifted into the hallway for refreshments. Kenzo approached her cautiously, sipping water from a plastic cup. "That was really good," he ventured, voice low. "I didn't realize how serious you were about this business." She folded her arms, scanning his face. He looked disheveled, his once confident aura reduced to a plea. "What are you doing here?" she asked bluntly. He cleared his throat, eyes flicking around as if worried someone might overhear. "I was hoping to find an opportunity. I'm trying to get back on my feet. I thought maybe these investors would be open to something else I've been working on." Lena shook her head in disbelief. "So you came to beg around? This is a professional space. It's not a job fair for ex-boyfriends who once called me worthless." Kenzo's cheeks flushed. He lowered his gaze. "I know I don't deserve your help, but please, can we talk privately?" She considered telling him to leave, to never contact her again. But a sudden flash of memory, days of hunger, nights of heartbreak, reminded her of what it felt like to be desperate. She exhaled slowly, feeling no love but a glimmer of compassion. "Fine. We'll talk later. Not here." A few days later, Kenzo came to Rootlink's modest office, which Lena had recently set up in a shared workspace. The tension was palpable. He explained his situation, multiple rejections, bills piling up, a sense that he had burned every bridge. "I want to apologize," he murmured. "I was wrong about you, everything. You've become something remarkable, Lena." She listened impassively, arms crossed. She recalled all the times he had made her feel small. She thought of how he left, proclaiming she'd amount to nothing. But she also recognized that each betrayal had fueled her transformation. After a moment, she spoke. "We do have an entry-level role, basically an operations assistant. It's grunt work. You'd be reporting to my logistics manager, Emmanuel." She locked eyes with him. "That's the only position available. If you want it, apply formally. Don't expect special treatment." He nodded, face a swirl of relief and chagrin. "Thank you. I appreciate anything." As he walked away, Lena felt a confusing mix of triumph and discomfort. Part of her wanted to see him succeed, if only to prove that success is possible for anyone who is truly committed. Another part seethed, remembering the pain he had caused. Yet, she wasn't the same naive girl. The power dynamic had shifted drastically, and Kenzo was now the one looking up to her. In the days that followed, she found herself marveling at how life can twist in unexpected ways. One moment, she was scraping by in a city of strangers, overshadowed by Kenzo's criticisms. The next, she stood at the helm of a growing startup while he stood on the outside, hoping to get in. Though the future remained uncertain, she knew one thing beyond doubt. No one would ever again tell her she was nothing. She had become the storm that others had to reckon with. As Rootlink continued its climb, attracting a steady stream of new farmers and city-based clients, Lena found herself increasingly under the spotlight. She was interviewed by local stations and even invited to speak at a regional conference on women in technology. Each new mention in the press brought both fans and critics. Everyone wanted a piece of the farm girl turned tech entrepreneur. With the increasing attention came the arrival of opportunists. One afternoon, Lena was approached by a charismatic individual named Victor, who introduced himself as an angel investor eager to support social impact ventures. He invited Lena to a swanky restaurant, a place where the silverware gleamed and the menu items had prices hidden behind cursive writing. The surroundings made Lena cautious, but she also recognized that Rootlink needed funding to scale. Victor spoke passionately about wanting to uplift rural communities, praising Rootlink's innovative approach. He said he had contacts who could help expand the platform beyond the country's borders. Lena listened, intrigued. She presented him with Rootlink's growth metrics: the number of farmers enrolled, the volume of produce sold, and the revenue model. He nodded enthusiastically. Then came the catch. Victor wanted to review Rootlink's proprietary information, supplier lists, buyer contacts, and the app's back-end details, to prepare a comprehensive due diligence report. Lena hesitated. Handing over sensitive data was risky. Still, if his investment was genuine, such documents were often part of the process. She decided to draft a non-disclosure agreement, NDA. Victor signed it without hesitation, and she handed him carefully curated files. At first, everything seemed promising. Victor called daily, discussing potential expansions, analyzing new market opportunities. Lena found herself daydreaming about RootLink's next phase, a presence across multiple countries, offering rural farmers a lifeline on an unprecedented scale. The company's modest staff of about a dozen employees, mostly local hires, buzzed with excitement at the possibilities. But about 2 weeks into their talks, Victor suddenly canceled a crucial meeting. Then another. His once lively phone calls trickled into sporadic vague texts about ongoing negotiations and visa issues. Lena grew anxious. Something felt off, like a storm brewing in the distance. She decided to investigate. A gut feeling told her to do a quick check on Victor's background. To her shock, she found multiple articles suggesting he had been accused of investment fraud in neighboring regions, promising funds, stealing intellectual property, then vanishing. Her blood ran cold. The next day, a concerned call from Emmanuel, her logistics manager, confirmed her worst fears. "Madam, I just got a strange inquiry from someone claiming to have a new agrotech platform wanting to poach our farmers," Emmanuel said, voice trembling with anger. "They have all our contact info, even non-public details." Lena's stomach clenched. She knew exactly who was behind this betrayal. Victor must have siphoned RootLink's data, planning to replicate or sabotage her business. Fueled by rage and adrenaline, she immediately alerted her mentor from the startup accelerator, who helped her draft a cease and desist letter to Victor. She also called the farmers, warning them about any suspicious new app promising unrealistic deals. Many farmers, loyal to RootLink, pledged their support. Social media erupted when Lena decided to go public with the story, posting a warning about fake investors who exploit small founders. The post went viral within the local entrepreneurial community, sparking outrage at the duplicity. Overnight, Lena's story took on a new dimension. Not just the farm girl who made it in tech, but also the tenacious leader who stood up to fraudulent predators. Victor tried to defend himself, claiming Lena misunderstood his intentions. But the evidence against him piled up. Old victims emerged, sharing their own encounters. News outlets picked up the scandal. Ultimately, the bad press forced Victor into hiding once more, and Lena never saw him again. However, the incident took a toll. Lena realized just how vulnerable RootLink still was. Growth was exciting, but it also made them a target. She decided it was time to bring on serious legal and cybersecurity advisors, even though their fees were daunting for a bootstrapped venture. "We can't afford not to," Lena told her team. "This is about protecting our farmers and our vision." Amid the drama, Kenzo's presence in the company was a constant awkward reminder of her past. He worked diligently under Emmanuel, running errands, making phone calls, and doing basic administrative tasks. Though he never caused open conflict, his eyes often lingered on Lena with a mix of guilt and admiration. She maintained a cool distance, trusting him only as far as his assigned tasks went. One afternoon, Kenzo knocked on her office door with a timid gesture. "Lena, can I come in?" She nodded, bracing herself. He handed her some documents, weekly logistics reports, then stood there, clearing his throat. "I heard about Victor. I'm sorry that happened," he said quietly. She studied his face. "It's business, Kenzo. It happens." He fidgeted, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "For what it's worth, I'm impressed with how you handled it. You were always unstoppable. And I was too blind to see it." She felt a twinge of old pain. Part of her wanted to lash out, to recount every belittling word he had ever thrown at her. But she was more concerned with RootLink's future than rehashing the past. "Thank you," she said simply, returning her focus to the stack of papers. "If you have nothing else to report, I have work to do." He stood there for another moment, perhaps hoping for a deeper conversation, then nodded and left. That evening, after the office had emptied, Lena stayed behind, reviewing security measures and refining her pitch deck for another round of funding. A swirl of exhaustion and determination coursed through her. She paused to look at the city skyline outside the window, lights twinkling like scattered gems, and thought about how far she'd come from reading tattered books by moonlight in Izayama. Yes, betrayal hurt. Yes, the road was fraught with pitfalls. But she felt more certain than ever that no storm could uproot her now. The seeds she had planted were growing stronger every day, nurtured by her resilience and protected by the unwavering belief that she was meant to lift others as she rose. And for the first time, she understood that while her past wounds might never fully vanish, they had become part of the armor that shielded her from future harm. A year passed in a blur of expansions, setbacks, small triumphs, and bigger ambitions. Rootlink now employed over 30 people, served hundreds of farmers, and had begun to garner national attention. Lena finally felt it was time to return to Izayama, not as the girl who left in shame and heartbreak, but as the CEO of a thriving venture. When she stepped off the bus onto the familiar red earth of her village, she inhaled the smell of palm trees and fresh air that had once been her entire world. A warmth spread through her chest. She didn't arrive in a fancy car. She had chosen to travel by bus for old time's sake, wanting to feel each jolt of the journey that had shaped her. Amma was waiting at the makeshift station, practically bouncing with excitement. They rushed into each other's arms, laughing and crying simultaneously. Amma had brought along her homemade pastries, insisting that Lena try them on the spot. "You said you'd bake for my meetings," Lena teased, taking a bite of a sweet roll. "I think I need to set up a permanent pastry counter in my office." "I'll ship them to your city address," Amma joked, eyes shining with pride. "You look good, my friend. So strong." They walked through the village's winding paths. The humble huts and small houses looked both unchanged and somehow smaller than Lena remembered. Children played tag in the dusty streets, and a few recognized Lena from news segments or internet videos. They paused mid-game, staring in awe. Some of the older villagers simply shook their heads, murmuring about how times had changed. That evening, the local council organized a small gathering in Lena's honor. Word of her success had clearly traveled fast. Her mother, Ima, wept as she welcomed Lena home, hugging her daughter fiercely. After the meal and pleasantries, the village elder, looking a bit more stooped but still carrying that ancient wisdom in his eyes, stepped forward. "This is the child born in the greatest storm I've ever witnessed," he said quietly, voice carrying the weight of decades. "And she has returned with blessings for us all." Lena felt tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She cleared her throat and addressed the crowd, sharing stories of Rootlink's growth, its mission, and the vision of expanding it to connect Izayama's farmers on a larger scale. "I'm here to set up a local tech hub," she announced, to gasps and murmurs of excitement. "We'll train our young people, provide internet access, and ensure that no more bright minds go to waste in the shadows." The night air rang with applause. Lena's mother could hardly contain her pride. "My daughter has done what I never dreamed possible," Ima whispered to a neighbor, who nodded in agreement. Over the next days, Lena met with local farmers, explaining how Rootlink could help them reach broader markets. Some were skeptical, but many had heard success stories from farmers in other regions. She arranged demonstration sessions, showing them how to use basic smartphones to list their produce. The older ones squinted at the screens, muttering about newfangled technology, but they listened intently. Amma took Lena to see her small bakery, a modest wooden shop that smelled of fresh dough and hope. "We're booming, Lena." Amma beamed. "I have orders for weddings, birthdays, even some city events. Remember when we used to dream under that mango tree?" They stood outside the bakery, staring at the old mango tree across the road, its branches swaying in the breeze. Lena smiled. "I remember saying I'd build a big company, and you said you'd bake for my meetings." Amma laughed. "And now you're building, and I'm baking." One afternoon, as Lena walked along the village path, she stumbled upon Kenzo by chance. He had followed her to Izayama, apparently to help with Rootlink's local initiatives. It struck her as strange to see him on her home turf, wearing jeans caked with dust as he supervised some hardware installation for the new tech hub. He approached her with a respectful nod. "Never thought I'd be setting up internet cables in a village," he said, managing a small smile. "But I guess life's funny like that." She nodded, hands in her pockets. Yes, it is. They stood in awkward silence. At last, he spoke. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm proud to be a part of something that's helping people. Feels good to do something meaningful. Lena studied him, searching for traces of arrogance. Instead, she found sincerity. She thought about how life can break people down, reshaping them into something different. Better, maybe. Or simply quieter. Keep doing your job well, she finally said. That's all I ask. He nodded, leaving her to her thoughts. She reflected on the bizarre twists of fate that had led both of them here. If Kenzo was sincere about rebuilding his life, she decided she wouldn't stand in his way. As the tech hub construction progressed, villagers gathered to watch. Lena took the stage once again, microphone in hand, explaining the basics of digital literacy. She also announced scholarships for local youth who wanted to pursue further education. Watching the faces of children light up at the possibilities made her heart swell. She realized this was the payoff for all the nights of tears and exhaustion. This was the reason she fought so hard against Kenzo's dismissals, the city's gatekeepers, and the predators like Victor. Finally, the day came for her to depart. Before leaving, she visited her mother's hut for one last meal together. Ima served steaming bowls of soup, the aroma a mixture of spices and motherly love. They ate in comfortable silence, savoring the moment. "Daughter," Ima said softly, after the meal, "I'm so proud of you. But don't forget to rest, to laugh, to love." Lena blinked back tears. "I'll try, Mama. I promise." As she boarded the bus, the entire village gathered to send her off. People cheered, waved, and some even sang farewell songs. Lena felt overwhelmed by gratitude. She had left Izayama once, heartbroken and uncertain. Now, she left as a pillar of hope for the community, someone who had harnessed a stormy past to sow seeds of a brighter future. The bus rumbled down the dusty road. She glanced back to see the mango tree disappearing from view, a final memory of the place that shaped her dreams. Clutching her notebook, she silently vowed that this was only the beginning. There were more storms ahead, no doubt, but she had learned how to bend without breaking. And with each bump of the bus, she felt the quiet, unstoppable rhythm of progress carrying her forward. Years slipped by, turning Rootlink into a national powerhouse and expanding its reach across neighboring countries. Farmers from impoverished regions saw their incomes double and even triple. The media hailed Rootlink as a groundbreaking platform, praising Lena Yuko for her unwavering commitment to uplifting rural communities. In a sleek new office building in the heart of the city, Lena conducted a board meeting. Amma was there, now heading a subsidiary of Rootlink that specialized in food products. Her bakery had merged with Rootlink's wellness initiatives. Emmanuel sat at the table with a calm authority, orchestrating logistics across multiple countries. Kyra dialed in from another city, updating everyone on the latest app improvements. At the end of the meeting, Lena pulled out a small plaque and set it on the table. The words etched into it read, "The Yuko Foundation, Empowering Girls in Tech." She surveyed her team. "This will be our legacy project," she announced. Scholarships, mentorship, and seed funding for girls from rural backgrounds. Because none of us should have to struggle alone to find our path. The applause was immediate, and Lena felt her heart swell with the same exhilaration she had known when reading by moonlight under the thatched roof of her mother's hut. Her dreams had grown beyond personal ambition. Now, she aimed to empower an entire generation. After the meeting, as she was leafing through documents in her office, Kenzo approached quietly. He handed her a sealed envelope, his expression earnest. "I've been carrying this letter for a while," he admitted, voice trembling. "It's an apology, a confession. I can't move forward without giving it to you." She looked at the envelope, then at Kenzo. In his eyes, she no longer saw the arrogance or cruelty that once held her back. But she also recognized that she didn't need his words or his remorse to define her peace. She set the letter on her desk without opening it. "Thank you," she said, her voice measured. "Whether I read it or not is my choice. And my choice is to keep moving forward." He studied her face, then nodded, stepping away with acceptance. Lena felt no animosity, no urge for revenge. She realized that she had built her own closure, brick by determined brick. There was nothing left to prove. That evening, she walked to the rooftop of her office building, looking out over the sprawling city lights. Memories of heartbreak, rejections, triumphant pitches, community gatherings, and uncertain bus rides flooded her mind. She felt tears threaten to spill, not from sorrow but from the sheer magnitude of her journey. She remembered the dusty roads of Izayama and the fateful night of her birth when the elder had said she'd bring either greatness or chaos. She smiled, thinking, perhaps it was a little of both. Greatness for her village, and chaos for anyone who doubted her. The wind rustled her hair, and she closed her eyes, feeling the hum of the city. A quiet certainty settled into her bones. All storms pass, and in their wake, they leave behind fertile soil for new beginnings. Lena had harnessed the storm, planting seeds of innovation and determination that now bloomed for countless families across multiple borders. The next morning, she flew back to Izayama for a ceremony unveiling the tech hub's new expansion. Children clustered around her, eagerly holding up tablets and phones, excited to show her their latest projects. The local teachers beamed with pride, explaining how the hub had revolutionized their curriculum. A small girl tugged at Lena's sleeve, eyes full of wonder. "Are you really Lena Yuko?" the child asked in a hushed voice. "Mama said you came from here, just like me." Lena knelt, meeting the girl's gaze. "I am," she said softly. "And so will you be, in your own way. Because you can achieve anything you set your mind to." Nearby stood the old mango tree, now with a small plaque beneath it. Curious, Lena guided the child to the tree's base. Her eyes scanned the inscription. She came from dust but rose like fire. She made the stars her blueprint. Lena's throat tightened. She traced the words with her fingers, recalling the countless hours she spent under this very canopy with Amma, dreaming of a life that no one believed she could have. Now here she was, proof that dreams can transcend the skepticism of others. For a moment, the sky seemed to open above her, revealing a radiant sun that cast dappled shadows through the mango leaves. The child giggled, twirling in the sunlight, as if celebrating the wonders that lay ahead. In that moment, Lena felt the full gravity of her journey. She was once the girl born under a storm, deemed too ambitious, too wild, too unrealistic. She had faced scorn, heartbreak, betrayal, and unforeseen hurdles. But each trial had shaped her into the force she was now, a visionary leader, a mentor, a daughter of the village who never forgot her roots. Taking the child's hand, she walked back toward the bustling tech hub, her heart alight with an unshakable conviction. This was only the beginning. More storms would come, and more obstacles would appear. But she would continue to light the way for others, just as the storm once lit the sky on the night of her birth. She had, at last, become the architect of her own destiny, and in doing so, she had given permission for countless others to do the same. I'm glad you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please go ahead and generously hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating tales like this. We'd love to hear from you. What lessons have you learned from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next story.